Section 1. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Now, how do you make all that happen? You might feel overwhelmed by all the choices, but there are people and agencies to help. Career Services is a great website with lots of useful information and a search tool for finding courses and providers throughout the country. Then there are the tertiary education institutions themselves. Universities and institutes of technology, for example, have comprehensive information on their particular websites. You can find out most anything there. Many campuses have a student support association, and they can tell you a lot about what to expect. Don't be afraid to ask them anything. I'm sure they've heard it all before. It might also be worthwhile to make inquiries with potential employers to see if they will fund or partially fund your studies. If it is a trade you want to learn, the apprenticeship scheme will help you earn while you learn. That way you'll get valuable work experience while you're studying. If you're still at school, then search out your school careers advisor, who will have a variety of information and resources at hand and be able to give you the kind of guidance you need to make a fully informed decision. And last but not least, don't forget your parents and other family members. They can be of enormous help too. Oh, one last thing that might help you make up your mind. Have you thought of applying for a scholarship? Some embassies, governments and individual institutions offer scholarships to cover part or all of your study fees. Most large libraries have a comprehensive catalogue of the various grants, awards and scholarships that are available.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Here you are. Mind the coffee. It's really hot.
Thank you. I'm really ready for this.
Have you thought about what we should see when we get to London?
The Tower, of course. I've always wanted to get a look at the crown jewels. That is where they keep the jewels, isn't it?
I think so. And what about the wheel? I hear it's quite extraordinary.
I'm not that keen on the wheel. Do you want to ride on it?
No way.
Well, let's leave it out of the itinerary then.
OK. So, do we do the tower first?
Yes, that's the idea. And then we absolutely have to go to Westminster.
Really?
Yes. Look, it's not going to cost us anything. And I promised my sister I'd take photos there.
Well, if you insist.
I do. Oh, did you know the British Museum is free to the public? Not just residents, but tourists as well.
Well, I did know that, but I was hoping we wouldn't have to spend time in any museums. We've only got 3 days in all, and it'll take at least 1 whole day to go through the museum.
Well, let's say we leave it till day 3 and see how you feel then.
OK, I can't argue with that.
And Buckingham Palace?
I suppose you've promised lots of photos of that as well, have you?
Well, no, not really. But we can't say we've been to London and haven't seen the Queen's Palace.
I guess not. And there's the added benefit that it won't cost anything as well.
Oh, Thomas, it's not that I'm afraid of spending money. It's just that I want to see all the traditional sites first.
Good. I'm glad that's sorted. Listen, I think they just called our flight.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Kingstown has been a busy town this year, with some high-profile and new events happening in and around the area. In January, we hosted the National Kayak Selections, and this competition attracted a number of well-known paddlers, not just from this country, but from Canada, Ireland, England, and Australia. Following this event, we had the nation's top bowls players descend on the township, with the national championships taking place at the Kingstown Bowling Club, attracting well over 400 players. It was a resounding success, as you could see from the numbers thronging the bowling centre in Main Street. February was the month for the Seriously Social Rafting competition, and this was the first time Kingstown had hosted an event of this nature. It attracted 96 paddlers from all walks of life who enjoyed a great day of fun on the river. After the success of last year's Open Half Marathon event, this year, in March, we hosted a women's-only duathlon in an attempt to get more women involved in sport. The starting point was at the Kingstown pool, but an extremely chilly evening saw a huge reduction in the numbers we were expecting. However, approximately 50 participants were not deterred from tackling the event, which for many was the first time, and these hardy contestants went into the first 2.5k run with great enthusiasm. The cycle leg was extremely challenging because it was into a headwind all the way, and the last 5k run was no easier. At this point, I must thank all the volunteers who took time out to help make this event successful, especially the road marshals who did an excellent job. We must also thank the Kingstown Creative Pursuits Society for hosting the wonderful Autumn Festival. The women involved put on a magnificent demonstration of traditional and present-day craft work, ranging from ancient weaving techniques to modern pottery designs and sculpture. These ladies are highly skilled, and they got a good turnout on the day, which, by the way, they are thinking of making a biannual event. So we might have a spring festival on its way. Winter brought with it the annual Kingstown Youth Tournament, which was a huge success, with the allocated team slots filling up fast. Teams consisted of approximately 15 youths, ranging in age from 8 to 18. The teams spent the day on the fields of Prince Park, playing a round-robin touch tournament system. The event, which drew large crowds of the public who cheered and gave lots of support and encouragement for the teams, showcased some outstanding youth talent.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Many materials in the home give off toxic gases as they burn. The main toxic gases are carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and nitrogen oxide. Carbon monoxide is an invisible and odorless gas produced in all fires. It takes up the place of oxygen in the blood, thereby reducing the supply of oxygen to the brain. The effect of carbon dioxide is to increase the heart rate and stimulate the rate of breathing, causing an increase in the intake of other toxic gases, which contributes to, amongst other symptoms, serious oxygen deprivation. Hydrogen sulfide, on the other hand, affects the nervous system, causing dizziness and pain in the respiratory system. It does occur naturally in volcanic gases and hot springs, and it also results from the bacterial breakdown of organic matter. You're probably familiar with it. You know, it has that characteristic odour of rotten eggs. But make no mistake, in large concentrations, it's deadly. Lastly, nitrogen oxide is another extremely poisonous gas at high levels of concentration, which deadens feeling in the throat and lungs, causes swelling in the throat, and a build-up of fluids in the lungs.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Good morning. Today, as part of your business management course, we're starting a unit on problem-solving skills and decision-making. Let's start with a powerful decision-making technique developed by Edward de Bono in his book, 6 Thinking Hats, which you'll find on your required reading list. The method works by compelling you to move outside your habitual ways of thinking. Often, success in business results from rational, positive thinking, but these approaches, used in combination with quite different ones, will improve the overall quality of your decision-making. Now, each thinking hat has a different colour and represents a different style of thinking. Let's start with the white hat. When you're wearing the white hat, you look at the information you have. You look at historical trends and try to analyse them. And you take account of gaps in your knowledge and try to fill them. On the other hand, if you're wearing the red hat, you listen to your gut reaction and instincts. You also try to imagine the intuitive response that other people might have. How would other people, who are unaware of your reasoning and all the facts at your disposal, react? That brings us to the black hat next. Black hat thinking, as its name suggests, is cautious and defensive, and you examine why something might not work. It all sounds very negative, but it is essential to know what the weak points in a plan of action might be. It permits you to alter your approach, eliminate problems, or at least be ready with contingency plans if the worst happens. After all, it is better to spot the fatal flaw and know the risks before you undertake a new enterprise. The opposite viewpoint, of course, comes with the yellow hat. It helps you to continue when the outlook is gloomy or the problems seem insurmountable. Think positively, and you'll see all the advantages and values of the decision and all the opportunities it brings. Let's look at what the green hat has to offer now. It stands for freewheeling, imaginative, inspired, innovative thinking, where there is little or no criticism of ideas. Original solutions to a problem are more likely to arise when you're wearing the green hat. Finally, the blue hat. This is the hat that the person chairing the meeting wears. The blue hat is in charge and organizes the meeting. He or she can point activities in the direction of other coloured hats when required. For example, if ideas have dried up, the blue hat will suggest more green hat thinking. If there is too much exuberance and enthusiasm for an idea, the blue hat will ask for black hat thinking to ensure that any possible defects have been addressed. Needless to say, you can use 6 thinking hats by yourself, but it really comes into its own when participants with different thinking styles come together to make a sound decision.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Do you have any special requests? You know, things you want packed in some special place so you know where to find them.
Like what?
Oh, I don't know. Things like dishes, maybe. Not to be rude, but you look like a lady who likes to eat.
Ah, yes, I need my dishes and things where I can find them quickly.
Great. We'll put those dishes and cutlery in what we call the emergency pack. Can you think of anything else?
I do have an antique tea kettle my great-grandmother gave my mother. I wouldn't want to lose that. So I guess you'd better put that in storage with the furniture.
Grandma's tea kettle with the furniture. Got it. Say, how about things like your alarm clock? You don't want to miss your plane on the big day, right?
Well, you certainly think of everything. Yes, that's right. I'll also need my alarm clock where I can find it.
Fine, we'll put that in your personal package. And of course, we'll give you a list of where we pack everything. So all you'll have to do on Thursday the 14th is grab your luggage on your way out the door. I couldn't help noticing the new CD player you're carrying. Is that a Samsung?
Why, yes it is. One of their best. Cost me nearly $100 it did.
Do you want to take special care of it? I mean, it's brand new.
Take care of it, but nothing special. You can just put it in storage with the furniture.
That looks like everything we need here. I guess you're all set.
That was certainly quick. Thank you, young man. This has been a most moving experience.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
What are the symptoms of phobia? Well, phobic states often develop into severe, crippling challenges that can be very difficult to overcome. The person develops a fear of certain situations. It's not uncommon to have one or more of these present at the same time. I'm going to name some frequent phobias and give you a description of their symptoms. Let's start with agoraphobia, which is when the person has an intense anxiety about venturing outside the safety of the normal home surroundings. It may be impossible for this person to ever go out alone. Their fear of public or open spaces is completely irrational, and they often end up leading very secluded lives. Claustrophobia, on the other hand, is a morbid fear of closed-in areas or places. If you see me taking the stairs instead of the lift, think about it. Am I trying to get more exercise, or am I trying to avoid the confined interior of the lift? And I'm sure you all know people who are afraid of flying. Sometimes it's the fear of being enclosed in the aeroplane itself, and you can imagine how the cramped confines of airline toilets are really bad news for these sufferers. Now I'll move on to discuss social phobia, which, believe it or not, is more common in men. It's an acute anxiety that develops when they are in the presence of others. They feel self-conscious, apprehensive, and embarrassed. If attention, real or imagined, is focused on the sufferer, he becomes uneasy and may blush, stammer, or stutter. Some sufferers even develop tremors, shaking or trembling movements of a part or parts of the body. Or another very common sign of their extreme discomfort is that they perspire profusely on their palms, under their arms, or on their feet. That brings me to the last one that I want to mention today, and that is single phobia. And no, it's not a fear of lifelong bachelorhood. This one is actually precipitated by an acute aversion to dogs, cats, spiders. You may have heard of the term arachnophobia. Well, it applies specifically to spiders, but any single thing can basically cause a strong aversion. Snakes, frogs, mice, or rats, for instance. I can assure you the list is unlimited. You name it, and someone is sure to have a phobia about it. Some people are terrified of the dark, for example, and I'm not talking about young children here. You'd be surprised how many adults are afflicted in this way. Well, I see our time is up. Next week I'll go into some of the treatments and therapies for phobias that have been used over the ages, and some of the relatively new drugs that have recently come on the scene.
Now, after having given you all those Stanford Hospital rules today, let me move on to a brief history of the place. It first opened in 1955, when it was known as the Southern General Hospital. It ran under this name until the 1980s, after which it changed to the present name and was enlarged with the addition of 2 buildings, the Matheson Building and the Western Wing, although it was the second of these which first began operations in 1984, leaving the Matheson Building to open 1 year later, and other extensions such as the rear annex to appear only in recent times. The Matheson Building housed the maternity wards, while the Western Wing was for infectious diseases, and they still have those functions today. An interesting event was the fire which broke out just after the rear annex was constructed. It was found that some faulty wiring linked to the main transformer caused the fire, starting in the central building, spreading out to the medical library, Western Wing, and the pediatric section. Fortunately, no lives were lost, although the damage bill was considerable. Apart from that, it's been pretty much plain sailing for the hospital, allowing it to gain the high regard in which it is held today. Now, do you have any questions?